I don't make decisions based on what's good for me. I make decisions based on what's good for the organization. And that's what I expect out of everybody in the organization. At the same time, I believe that by investing in people, then your organization is better. I don't see myself necessarily as the boss. I see myself as a coach, but I'm also part of the team. And I have a very unique position that no one else has, but I'm part of the team. And if the organization isn't successful, the team isn't successful, I'm not successful. So really what I see my role as is empowering my team to be able to do the job that they need to do.
Well, welcome back to the Rutherford County GOP podcast, where we highlight conservative leaders from across our community and our state. Today's guest has one of the more remarkable journeys in public life, from small town roots to Friday Night Lights to the bright lights of the WWE. And now serving as Knox County Mayor, Glenn Jacobs has built a life defined by discipline, perseverance, and purpose. Many of you know him as WWE Hall of Famer Kane, one of the most recognizable figures in professional wrestling. But behind that persona is a man that's driven by faith and family and service. And so today we'll talk about how those early experiences have shaped his leadership, what he's learned from decades in public life, and what continues to inspire him today. So, Mayor, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, it's great to have you. We just kind of want to, what we like to tell is all the stories that don't get told in the national media and the newspaper. It's the who you are as a man. Kind of where did you come from? Those stories, and so we don't dive too much into bios. If we did, we'd be here for the first 30 minutes of the
That's right.
But we just want to know Glenn Jacobs. Tell us where you came from. You're a Missouri kid, right?
Yeah, actually, I was born in Madrid, Spain. My dad was in the Air Force at the time. He is a 21-year military veteran. He was in the Navy during the Korean War, then switched services, did a stint in Vietnam. He was load master on the C-130 big cargo planes. So my life actually began in Spain. And then when I was very young, we moved back to the States. Dad retired when I was about 4 years old from the military. And we moved to rural Northeast Missouri, close to Hannibal, home of Mark Twain. I grew up on a farm about 5 miles outside of a town of 350 people. So it was a very small, very rural area. Because of my dad's military retirement, we always got by. But I don't want to say he had a tough time transitioning to civilian life. It was just an economically depressed area. And it was also in the 1970s when I'm growing up, a bit of an economically depressed time for our country. So Dad found work in factories, but he'd get laid off. And if he were laid off and the car broke down or something like that, things get real tight. My mom and dad worked really hard. But for me, that just had a profound impact that when I grew up, I didn't ever feel like, I'm working really, really hard like my mom and dad are and barely keeping a head above water. So as long as I can remember, my dream was always to play professional sports. And started with baseball, which was a great plan, except I can't hit a ball. I can't field a ball and I can't throw a ball. So I realized I didn't have the skill set to go into the major leagues. I was tall and clumsy, and if you ever see a picture of me when I was a kid, I was that kid, right?
Yeah.
But I figured I have the competitive advantage of basketball, so I started playing that, and that didn't quite work out either. But
tell us a little bit about that. So you ended up going to college and playing basketball.
I did, yes. So I was playing basketball in high school. I wanted to go to Mizzou. It was the big state school. Mm-hmm. And then partway through my senior season in basketball, I was going up for rebound, and I came down on another player's foot, turned my ankle, tore ligaments in my ankle. That was the end of my high school career, and along with it, my Division I scholarship offers. Obviously, I needed a scholarship to go to college. Mom and Dad couldn't afford to pay for that. So I went to a smaller school. It's called Truman State University. Back then, it was Northeast Missouri State University. Now it's Truman State University. A really good academic school. Played basketball and was wrapping up my basketball career. And I'd put on a lot of weight since I'd begun in college. When I was in high school, my coaches discouraged you from lifting weights because, the old thought was you become muscle bound and lose your shooting touch. By the way, for young people out there, that's absolutely not true. I think people should lift weights and work out, but nevertheless, that's kind of conventional wisdom. In college, my coaches were more sophisticated, and I love to lift weights.
Yeah.
And I love to eat. So you can imagine what happened to my body between those two things.
So the freshman 15.
The freshman 15 turned into senior 50.
Which you can kind of get by with playing football. Maybe not so much playing basketball.
So my eligibility in basketball is wrapping up. And the football, again, this is a small school. We had about 7,500 enrollment, NCAA Division II school. So the football coach comes to me, and I was wondering why he's always watching our practices, because he'd be up in the stands or whatever watching practice, especially towards the end of my senior season. And one day he pulls me aside and he's like, son, you're not going to play in the NBA. I'm like, well, thanks, coach. I appreciate that. I know. Right? It's like, but why are you running up and down the basketball court at 285 pounds? He's like, you need to be on a football field, man. And he was like, and here's the thing. You might be able to play in the NFL because of that size. So sure enough, I was like, I had some coursework left. My degree is in English. I was going to teach and coach. It's kind of my backup plan if playing didn't pan out. But I still had some coursework left. I got caught in a kind of academic transition. The school was changing curriculum and I came right in the middle of it. So I got caught and I had some courses to make up to get my degree. So I'd gain another year eligibility if I switched sports. So I did. And sure enough, man, I'll never forget, we're out there practicing in football, and I look over and there's a dude wearing a Indianapolis Colts windbreaker. Scott from the Colts, there to watch me,
So what's your mindset? You're gonna be surprised. That's never happened to me. What's your mindset as you're sitting in practice and you look over and there's scouts there for you?
Yeah. My mindset was that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so, I worked really, really hard as I possibly could. I was in the weight room as much as possible, training just all the time.
So you were ready for it when they showed up?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And I figured that was going to be my shot, because when I was a kid, baseball hadn't worked out, really hadn't given it a chance. But basketball hadn't worked out, but I was going to make sure that there was no question that if football didn't work out, it wasn't going to be my fault. Right, I was going to put in as much work as I needed to, I was working out with position coaches from NFL teams, and remember one time I got like a letter from the Cowboys, and it was their general manager, all this stuff, and fortunately, by nature I'm pretty grounded, so I did not get a big head that actually compelled me to work even harder. As opposed to thinking, oh my gosh, I got it made. Now it's time to really double down. At the end of practice one day, we're putting in trick plays for that weekend's game. It was a Monday. And this is really embarrassing because we were just walking through a play. No contact. I wasn't even wearing my helmet or shoulder pads. Okay. And somehow I managed to get my cleat stuck in a hole on the field as I was pivoting. It had been a dry few weeks. And, we didn't necessarily have University of Tennessee caliber training facility. Okay. We just had a grass practice field. And I got my cleat stuck in a hole. I was wearing they're called screw-in cleats. They have a little bit longer, give me more traction. But anyway, I got my cleat stuck in a hole. Next thing I know, I'm laying on the ground. When I go to stand up, my knee buckled and I had to have someone help me off the field. And, I had torn my anterior cruciate ligament, meniscus, cartilage. And I did it. I could have done it walking down the street. Seriously, it's just one of those freak deals. So I did not have medical red shirt. If I was going to play, I had to come back and play that year. Also, this is 1990, so obviously medical technology and surgical techniques and rehabilitation, none of those things are what they are today. So it was literally, I would have had to get my knee laid open, fixed. It's then 9 months of rehab. Then there was no guarantee. I remember talking with the orthopedic surgeons about this. There's no guarantee that my knee would be any better than it was. Because when I say it was torn, it was about 75% torn, but enough that there's a serious deficiency. So I just came back as soon as I could. I was back playing again in about 6 weeks. It's very difficult because you're going through rehab, and then also I lost a lot of explosiveness. Some of my speed was gone. My lateral movement was really diminished from what it had been before. And the thing is, it wasn't that I was a great football player. I actually didn't know how to play football. I was just bigger and more athletic than everybody I was playing against. And with that taken away, now all of a sudden it's like, instead of being at 100%, I'm like at 80%. And it just wasn't a player afterwards that I was before. But
tell me, like, what's your mental? What do you like mentally? I mean, in that situation, it's got to be depressing a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I remember my mom showed me a letter that our trainer, mom and dad, had come up. They lived a couple hours away. So they come up, took me to the hospital over at the University of Missouri, actually. I was going to school in Kirksville, Missouri, went to see doctors at Columbia, which is, again, about 2.5 hours. And while I was there, they talked with our trainer, and he wrote him a note, and it was really nice. But one of the things he said was, just like everyone else in the situation, Glenn's, mental well-being is, he had depression, all of those things. And that's exactly right. And that's part of overcoming that is the ability to just, put it behind you. And I will say that my response was not what I would have wanted it to be. How they say that it's not what happens to you that's as important as how you respond. And I do believe that, especially after all of this. And my response wasn't very good. I'll get more on that in a second, but again, I just decided this is my one chance. So, I just gritted my teeth and just worked as hard as I could to get back on the field, and eventually, after the season was over, to put myself in a position to get drafted. That was my goal.
That's amazing.
And yeah.
What did you learn about adversity going through that? The power of adversity, maybe that you didn't see in the midst of it.
Yeah. Now, when I look back on that was probably one of the best things that would have happened to me. And the reason is because that's actually why I got into wrestling, and when I think about a career in the NFL, that would have been very difficult. I would have come in at that level in college. Again, I was bigger and a better athlete than pretty much everybody. Man, you get to the NFL and I'm a dime a dozen. I'm still a good athlete, still big, but there are people, there are people just as big and just as athletic, so exactly. And I remember talking with one of the position coaches, and he said, what players have difficulty with transitioning, really probably from any level, but especially from college to the pros, is the game is so much faster. And I remember last year I was watching a game here with the Titans, and I've been to a lot of games at Neyland Stadium, and it is amazing even how much quicker things happen in the NFL than they happen in the SEC. And of course, the SEC is an elite conference, but yeah, I would have lost what made me really special. I'd have been just like everybody else. Instead, I had almost a 30-year career, and my body probably, despite wrestling, my body probably didn't get beat up nearly as badly as it would have in the NFL. That's really hard. So it turned out, looking back, if you'd have told that 20-year-old kid laying on a football field with a blown out knee. Hey, kid, this is going to work out for you. I probably would have had some really harsh words for you, right? But the story actually gets a little worse.
The poster that hangs in your room as a kid doesn't tell that story.
No, exactly. But it gets a little worse because, I said, my whole goal was to get drafted. Because once I got drafted, I figured, man, all I needed was to be able to get on the field.
You made it,
yeah, I'll do the work. I didn't get drafted, so that was a disappointment because of my knee. But my agent talked with the Chicago Bears.
But you did go to training camp, right?
I did, yeah. So he talks to the Bears, and the Bears are like, yeah, we're aware of the knee injury, but we'll work with him. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I went to rookie mini camp. You go through, first day I tell people to go through all these physicals, everything from vision, hearing, dental, full orthopedic examination. Luckily back then they didn't have the mental evaluations, so I was okay there, right? No one said anything about my knee throughout that process that first day. In fact, I remember meeting with our position coach, and he was explaining what would happen the following day. We'd be practicing. And next day, I'm getting off the bus from the hotel to the practice field, and everyone else goes up to the field house, and there was someone waiting for me at the bottom of the bus. Took me to the director of player personnel office, got a plane ticket home. I mean, I hadn't even been there like a full day, and that was crushing. Like the injury was like, this stinks, but I'm gonna work to overcome it. That was like, this is the end. I'm not going to get another chance. I kept on working out, hopefully playing the World League, but I'd already got cut by a team for having an injury, so for all intents and purposes, that was the end of that dream that I'd had ever since I could remember of being a professional athlete.
So how do you go from being in training camp with the Bears to East Tennessee?
Yeah. So, that's when the depression actually hit, and I was devastated because up until that point in my life, that had been the worst thing that ever happened to me. I'm in my early 20s and
kind of lost your dream.
Yeah, exactly. The worst part was, it's like, I was right there. Yeah. Like if I couldn't make the team, okay, I couldn't make the team. But the fact that I didn't even get a chance, then you're starting to really question, why did I even try? Why did I even sacrifice and do these things? One night, buddy of mine and I are watching time as WWF on TV. And I'm floundering,
Because you didn't grow up like a huge wrestling fan, right?
I was a Hulkamaniac just like everybody else was, but it wasn't like, I lived and died with professional wrestling.
Yeah, you were just an athlete.
Yeah. And I respected what they did, but I didn't see myself doing that. And I'm kind of floundering. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life again. I had some odd jobs, like, I was doing some substitute teaching. I worked in a group home for folks with special needs. I just did some personal training. So I'm just kind of, floating through life trying to figure out which way I really want to go. And my buddy's like, you should try that. And, I'm watching, I'm going, wow, that's not a bad idea actually, because it's still an athletic endeavor. Right. Even though it may not be a sport per se, it still involves athleticism. And my degree's in English. I know Shakespeare, so I do, I actually love performing and I was like, man, this actually combines all of these things that I really enjoy. So give it a shot. And got a little bit of training from a small group and was traveling around and eventually came to East Tennessee in 1995. I was working in wrestling.
It's funny because a lot of the world knows you as the wrestler that becomes mayor, and
right.
Hearing these stories of you overcoming adversity and being an English major that gets into wrestling, it really kind of just tells, it's like peeling back the onion, right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
kind of telling the story. It's really remarkable, like to go from an English major in college to becoming a a wrestler.
Right.
I'm going to guess there's probably not a lot of other wrestlers that are English majors coming out of school. I don't.
Probably more like PE majors, But actually, most of the guys did go to college and either had a degree.
A lot of athletes, right?
Yeah, and some were athletes. Yeah, not in wrestling though. People always ask me if I wrestled in high school or college, and it doesn't translate. They're very different things, obviously. But a lot of the guys played college football, college basketball, and there is a competitive component to it. Even though the matches themselves are choreographed and it's a lot like dancing, you also want to be good at it.
Yeah.
So there is that component to it as well.
What was it that drew you to East Tennessee? So how did you kind of land?
Yeah, that was actually, I was just working, kind of moving up the ladder, networking. There's an organization called Smokey Mountain Wrestling, and I got a job there. I met my wife. So she's an East Tennessee girl, but I love it there too. It's just a wonderful part of the country. The people are great. Here in Tennessee, we don't have a state income tax. So once I started making money, that was very advantageous. Also, Knoxville it's pretty easy to get most places. Back then, in our airport, it doesn't have as many direct flights as it does now, but still, man, if you can get to Atlanta or Charlotte, you can get anywhere in the world, and those are both half-an-hour flights, And it's just like what people say about Tennessee. Me coming from Missouri, it's absolutely true. It's just a great place to live, and the people are, Midwesterners and Southerners, as far as our friendliness and hospitality, we're almost the same people. It's just the Midwesterners talk weird, but
So we're both very biased because he's from Maryville originally. I'm from West Tennessee, but I went to UT, so I have a deep affection for Knoxville and East Tennessee myself, and it really is a special place. We probably shouldn't say that on the Rutherford County podcast.
Well, Rutherford County's great too.
But it is.
Our entire state, it's just, it is. There's something about this place that's a little different in a good way.
All right, we got to get back to wrestling for just a second.
That's it.
Because I want to. So some of your characters are pretty impressive. The Christmas creature, that was one of the first ones?
Yeah, that was actually just like a 2-week run. That was with Jerry Lawler, USWA,
Memphis guy
in West Tennessee. Yeah. And that was kind of my first gig with an actual wrestling organization. I remember, we did shows at the Channel 5 studio and all that.
Oh yeah, we watched Memphis wrestling growing up. So.
Yeah. So what's cool about that, and it was Jerry's son, Kevin, was a really good artist and very creative guy. He had this idea for like a Christmas themed bad guy. So he sends me these pictures. My mom made the actual outfit, and it was basically a Christmas tree, but it had.
Was it hard to wrestle in a Christmas tree?
Yeah. Yeah. It had lights in the outfit. Okay. So it had Christmas lights, and my mom put a battery pack in this dadgum thing. Yeah. So this is like 1993 or something. It is way ahead of its time.
It sounds like
very, very technological, very innovative. Yeah, and then there was some other stuff, and you have to think of it too. It's like the movies, when you're first breaking in, a lot of time you get the bit parts, and you get the smaller roles until you actually get the starring role. And that's how mine was. I started with that, some other stuff. I get to WWE. My first character there was a wrestling dentist. I couldn't sing my teeth into that one.
Isaac Yankem.
Yes. And the whole idea was I Yankem. That's where that came from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, WWE was going through a very, almost a cartoonish period, and I came in at the end of that, and I just, and it's funny now because a lot of people are like, yeah, I love that. And I was like, well, I didn't. Then moved on to another character.
Did you pick these characters?
I didn't pick them, no.
They were assigned to you.
No, exactly, yes. Yeah. And then finally the Kane character was created. I didn't really pick that one either, but that was the one.
That was supposed to be a short-term deal though, right? You debuted in your hometown or in Missouri, I think, wasn't it?
What's that?
Didn't you debut?
No. Oh, I did. Yes, I did. So yes, sorry. Yeah, that was supposed to have been a short-term deal. Basically Undertaker just needed an opponent for an upcoming big match. So they had this idea for me. His long lost brother, this big backstory. And then the creative folks liked the idea so much, like, why are we wasting this on one match? But yeah, the debut was actually in St. Louis. I forget, it was like the new Kiel Auditorium. I forget what it was back then, but that was kind of cool to be able to go back and I guess come full circle a little bit. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was it that made the villain roles more appealing or challenging for you?
What made
as
them,
those personas?
Yeah. Again, they weren't. I saw them as stepping stones, right? And it wasn't anything that I realized like, man, I don't like this dentist deal, but at the same time, it got my foot in the door. And as long as my attitude is good, it'll run its course. But as long as my attitude is good, I show them what I have. I'm a team player. And that's one of the most important things too, man. Is just, one of the things I've learned about leadership is it's all about the organization, and too many times people think it's about them, and for me, it was never about what could WWE do for me. I knew that would take care of itself. It was like, what can I do for them? And then obviously then that reciprocates, right? Yeah. And that's kind of how I viewed it is I was in the big leagues, maybe not quite where I wanted to be, but if I were to just pout and take my ball and go home, I wouldn't be in the big leagues at all, right? So I just hope that if I just worked hard, kept at it, showed a good attitude, that eventually I get a break.
Yeah. How did that, your lessons from, really, basketball and the adversity there, and then football and the adversity there translate to the WWE?
For me, it was, I never took WWE for granted. I was always, I always realized I was very blessed and fortunate to be there because, I was one knee injury away from not being there, just like in football, knee injury ended my career there. And, so being there was something I just never said, it could all end tomorrow. Right. So I wanted to make the most of it. And again, I think that drove me to work harder because I was never complacent. I never sat back and said, oh, I'm fine. Everything's great. For years, my wife would be like, why are you working so hard? Especially after I became very established and one of the top people, like, why are you working so hard? You're always on the road. You're always working, like, because there's someone there to take my spot. Yeah. And if I don't work as hard as I do, I'll lose that spot. And I know what I had to go through to get here. Yeah. So I think
established means I've made enough money where I don't have to do this anymore.
Well, and also you realize, you're secure. You draw money for the company,
right?
And you're in a good spot. But yeah, there's no telling what could happen that could just turn that on its head. So I never took any of that for granted.
Which is interesting because you did that for 20 years, right?
Yeah, over 20 years.
How do you go? I mean, Netflix just recently did the special on WWE.
Yeah.
And you see what those guys have to go through from night to night. I mean, it's tough on your body.
Yeah. And it's also hard emotionally because I was on the road 250 days a year, away from my family. So it wasn't easy, but at the end of the day, it's really about priorities and what you're willing to give up. I don't say sacrifices because I made those decisions on my own, and I also knew that there was a finite time. This was all going to end at some point. So I just wanted to put myself in as good a position I could when that time came. And that's really, I never even thought about how long I was there. It's just, we're going and going and going. And then it just turned into a couple decades per chance. But yeah. And I actually never found, because I was a bigger guy, I didn't have to do a lot of the crazy stuff that some of the smaller guys do. So it wasn't the actual in-ring stuff that was hard. That was fun. It was the getting there, the being away from home, sleeping in a different bed.
Yeah.
We would often say that I don't get paid to wrestle. I get paid to travel there, and to travel back is where the hard work comes in.
I'm just kind of curious about this. Who are some of your biggest influences when you're wrestling? Because you have like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, President Trump was quite involved. Who's your biggest influences? I'm sure there's a lot of people.
Yeah, Undertaker, Mark Calloway. We worked very closely for years. I would never have got to where I got. I mean, there wouldn't be an Undertaker if there hadn't been Kane.
So he kind of took you under his wing.
Yeah, and also I remember one time I was just, some things weren't going great. And I remember one time talking with the management, and they said that Mark had already been to say something. They're like, he worries more about you than he does himself. And that's, again, kind of that teamwork thing. I realized that, what I saw from him that I modeled was, again, it was about the organization, and it wasn't about you. Again, if the organization succeeds, you're going to benefit from that. But it's really about ensuring that the organization reach the levels that it could, and obviously then everybody that can contribute to that.
How has that mindset benefited you as a leader now in the public space?
Oh, it's huge. I don't make decisions based on what's good for me. I make decisions based on what's good for the organization. And that's what I expect out of everybody in the organization. At the same time, I believe that by investing in people, then your organization is better. I don't see myself necessarily as the boss. I see myself as a coach, but I'm also part of the team, and I have a very unique position that no one else has, but I'm part of the team. And if the organization isn't successful, the team isn't successful, I'm not successful. So really what I see my role as is empowering my team to be able to do the job that they need to do.
So I'm curious now, at what point in your wrestling are you like, I'm kind of into politics? Like, you're sitting in your hotel room and you're watching the news. Like, how do you go from wrestling into politics?
I've always been interested in government politics. Even though my degree's in English, my favorite subject was history and social studies when I was in high school. And that it just always kind of attracted.
Was that discussion around the dinner table at home as a kid, or?
Not really. My folks weren't overly political. I would say that they were kind of Goldwater Republicans, but it's not like we did sit around and talk about all these issues. They would pop up every once in a while, but that wasn't it. It was just something that I was naturally interested in. Then once I got into WWE, there was just stuff like the wrestlers are independent contractors, which means that they're responsible for quarterly payments and with income tax, all these other things that if you're an employer, if you're an employee, you don't even think about because your employer does that. Pretty quick.
You're a contractor for
Yeah, exactly. Pretty quickly, you start really noticing all the stuff and the waste and the inefficiencies in the federal government when you've had a good quarter and you have to write out a check to the IRS, and you're like, wait a second, what are they doing with my money? So, that was one of the things. And then just, I just had this natural kind of attraction for whatever reason, to understanding government and politics. That started leading me down different wormholes and, paying a lot more attention to the news and current events and things that were going on.
So you're living in Knoxville at that time.
Yes.
And so you decide I'm going to run for office. Like, tell me, how did you pick running for Knox County mayor?
Yeah, that's a great question. At that point, I was doing a lot. I was doing stuff in politics, supporting candidates and doing things. And I knew that obviously I was 50 years old, so I couldn't wrestle forever, and kind of what was the next step for me in my life. And it wasn't like any big thing that I'm like, oh, I'm mad about this or I want to change this. It was more of, hey, what am I going to do? In Knox County, we're term limited. So now Congressman Burchett was not going to be able to run again, so there was an open seat. So it's kind of like the stars aligned as far as, okay, if I'm going to do this, this is when I need to do it. Local government it's actually really hard. I'll never forget one time I was at an event. There was a U.S. senator from another state at this event, and we're standing in the back of the room, and he leans over to me, and he's like, "Why did you want to get in local government? It's really hard." And I'm like, "You're in the U.S. Senate, and you're saying it's hard, but it is because we're the ones we're right there." I'm at the
most
grocery
close
store.
to the people.
Yeah, and people are coming up, and before my drive over here, I was actually out, and this lady's like, "Hey, Mayor, can I talk to you for a second? We really need speed bumps in my neighborhood." And that stuff like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's cool too because you actually, you're very connected, and you feel that you have influence on the direction your community takes. So just all of those things is like, man. I've never been afraid to step outside my comfort zone. I think that's one of the keys to success for anybody. So I just woke up one day and kind of thought about it and, talked to some people and decided that's what I was going to do.
So go ahead, Matt.
I have along those lines. I think the longer I've been involved in the political space, the greater my appreciation has been for local government.
Yeah.
Because of the impact that you can have on people's lives. And I think it's a lot, even as a college Republican and as a young Republican, it was always flashy to be involved in the gubernatorial race or the U.S. Senate race for various and obvious reasons. But the older I've gotten, the more involved I've been. It really matters who's sitting at the county courthouse and at City Hall on the city council and county commission. Those things really matter, for lots of reasons.
Yeah, and you can see it right now across our country, and just the differentiations between states and even localities. You think about a lot of stuff going on over in Memphis, and then you look at East Tennessee, and it's just completely different. And the reason is, I think, is because, just
local governance.
Local government, yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
Everything else is kind of the same, the same federal government, same state government, but it's the local officials. And you see that, and you see that with states, obviously, too. Why are people moving to Tennessee? A lot of it is because they're getting out of California and New York, where they've just gone nuts, and they're coming to a place that when you think of America, you think of Tennessee.
And I think COVID really brought that to light for a lot of people, because that's where the local politics really, people felt it more than any other time. It impacts us every day, every year when we pay our property taxes and everything else. But when COVID hit and you couldn't leave your house in some places.
Yeah.
You got to know who your local officials were.
Exactly.
And there was certainly some state input, but your local city and county mayors were huge.
Yeah, they were, for the most part, that was what was driving all of that. It was it was during the pandemic at some point. We had an opportunity to get this regional CrossFit game. It's a qualifier for like the big one. There's only 8 of these in the entire world, right? So I'm over at the zoo. We're doing something over there, and the guy, he comes over to meet with us just to say hello. They were in D.C., and he's walking around almost stunned. And he said, when I walk out of my apartment in Baltimore, if I'm not wearing a mask, they hit me with a $100 fine. And I'm like, yeah, cool, dude. You want to feed the giraffe? He's just like, what is going on here? And we got them, actually, which should never happen.
Yeah.
We're not that big an area where we get like one of the 8 qualifying games, CrossFit games in the world. But you're exactly right.
Yeah.
It was because of the differences in local government. We allowed businesses to do business. We did everything we could to make sure that our economy wasn't disrupted. Meanwhile, other places, they just shut everything down and didn't care who they hurt.
Well, we've got elections coming up next year, which are really big elections. All of our county commission seats are up. 2 mayor races, obviously state. We've got governor race, and there's a lot going on next year. And, we preach every year the importance of getting out the vote, the importance of voting. And I was looking back at your first run. You had a pretty tight race. You want to share that with us a little bit?
Yeah. So when I decided to run for mayor, this is 2018, Knox County is a very Republican county. So obviously whoever won that primary was going to become mayor, right? So you put all your emphasis in the primary, and I worked really hard, knocked on doors, done all this stuff. From the get-go, I thought I was going to win because
you're Kane.
Yeah. Then I learned that I was the only person that thought I was going to win after the election, but nevertheless. That was one of the more stressful nights in my entire life because I ended up winning. Okay, there were 40,558 votes cast in the 2018 Knox County mayoral race primary. I won by 23.
23.
Yeah, 23 votes. So you're exactly right. Every vote does count. At least it did in my race. And, because of that, and I ran my opponents are great guys. I've become friends with them. They're really good guys. But I don't think that they would have done the same things that I've done.
It's amazing how God works. In some situations like basketball or football, it's like you've made it there and that door closes. And then there's other circumstances in life like that election where it was just meant to be.
Yeah.
Like 23 votes is enough. And you get there and, when sometimes you're on the wrong side of things and sometimes you're on the right side of things. And it's just all about his plan. But
you're right too. It is about his plan, If that hadn't happened, I would have gone back to wrestling. I would have been okay, but, I think about football and again, how I was just devastated when that injury happened. But if I could go back and talk to that kid, I'd have been like, man, this is actually great.
Just don't quit.
Yeah. But if thinking about the voting, right? In the 2018 election, there was a lot of stuff on the ballot. You had a 4-way governor's race. You had the U.S. Senate race was heating up. There's a congressional race heating up. You had all this stuff going on. So again, 40,558 votes cast in the Republican primary in 2018. I won in the general election. I won 23 votes, primary. Won the general election, I had 63% of the vote. My Democrat opponent had 37. Fast forward to 2022. Governor Lee's unopposed in the Republican primary. There's no Senate race on the ballot. Congressman Burchett's unopposed. So the sheriff and I were probably the 2 biggest races on the ballot. I won in a landslide in the 2022 Republican primary. Problem is I won 16,000 votes less. I only had 24,000 people vote. The Democrats actually, I think, maybe had 1% more vote than they did in 2018. Then that translated in the general. I lost 8 points. I went from 63 to 55. That was true across the board of the state with the countywide races. We lost a commission seat, and we only lost it by like 100 votes. And that's the thing about these local elections too. You go out and 100 votes swings the whole thing. So one of the things that we Republicans have to do is we have to become better at realizing the importance of local elections, because Democrats do. I mean, they're all about it. They're organized, and you don't see that drop off among Democrats that you do among Republicans. But it hurts us, and it hurt us in Knox County. We a couple years later, it was that same year we had partisan school board races. Could have secured. We had an open seat on the school board. Could have secured another Republican. Right now we're 5-4. We could have gone to 6-3. Lost that race again by under 150 votes, I think. So it does make a difference in these local races. The turnout is just massively important.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, unfortunately, is complacency. And we're at a point where we've been in power. Republicans have for over a decade at this point in our state, and things are incredibly well. And so it is, I think we're facing that here too in Rutherford, is how do we get people to stay actively involved and motivated to continue fighting the fight and continue winning elections. I mean, because we're going to have a lot of turnover here in our county on the county commission, and opportunities still on our school board and elsewhere. And we really need people to show up next year. Thankfully, it'll be like you had in 18. We got a gubernatorial race that will be, driving a lot of turnout in our August county general election, which I think will help tremendously with a lot of that. But, still need people to show up.
And I think when things are going really well, people say, I'm good. I don't have to say.
Glenn's got this. I don't, Yeah. When I ran in 2018, I ran to a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about this, and he literally called his mom, and he's like, "Have you voted yet?" "Oh, no, I don't know if I'm going to make it today." He's like, "No, you get down there and you vote right now." And sure enough, she did. But you're right. I think that when there's that sense of urgency, yes, but a lot of times things go well, and there is its complacency, and that's just how people are. I mean, it's how I am. But the thing is, boy, things can go from being good to not being so good. Yeah. We saw that in 2020 at the national level, really quick. One election can just turn everything upside down.
Well, one of the things I want to talk about, you brought the school board stuff and made me think about your position on education, because that's been a big part since you've been mayor in Knoxville. I think it's interesting kind of looking at your history. You've got a brother, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, a brother is a mechanic, correct? And your sister is worked for NASA for a little
she was
bit.
rocket science.
You kind of got the tradesman brother and the university highly educated sister. And I think you've done a really great job in education, because you haven't. Oftentimes we want to focus on one area or the other, but not both. And both are really important. And Knoxville was just, I think, nominated top place to relocate to. And I think it's because of the quality of life and the opportunities that are given to us in that community. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy on education, because I think having that perspective of having siblings that are kind of excel on both ends of the spectrum, I think is interesting in how you've set that up.
I believe that God has given all of us unique gifts, and an issue with our education system was it's turning, but for some time has been just we pigeonhole everyone, and we say there's one way to be successful, and that's you go to college and you get some sort of degree. It doesn't even matter what. You just get some sort of degree and figure it out after you get out of school. That has not worked. What we've seen is people graduating with degrees that they can't use, and tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And that's where you start life. So for me, it's just encouraging young people to explore different career paths. And one of the things when I talk with our high school kids is I can't define what success is for them individually. They have to do that for themselves. And I believe what success ultimately is if you live a life that brings you meaning and purpose. You have to be productive, obviously, all those things. But I can't say, you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do this. You have to figure it out, because all of us are different. And if we have an education system that is just one size fits all, we're going to just shed kids, all over the place. So I do think that it needs to be as wide-ranging as possible. And the most important thing is it's not just there is one pathway, that there are multiple pathways, and kids can experience, if you want to turn a wrench, great. If you want to design a rocket ship, great too. And everything in between. If you want to paint and you can make a living at that, figure it out. If you want to, I don't know, if you want to design a nuclear reactor, great, figure it out. And we have, obviously, there are going to be some things that everybody has to know, reading, writing, arithmetic, right? But a lot of the other things, are going to be specific for whatever. And I think that, with my brother, he didn't like being in the classroom. He was dyslexic, so he was also at a disadvantage early on learning to read. And for him, it was why he has gotten to where he has gotten in life is because he had an opportunity through education to learn auto mechanics, right? If he hadn't had that, I really worry about what it would have happened to him, because he would have been a troublemaker. He's a smart guy. He'd have sat in the back of the class and been bored and idle hands. You know, it happens there. But because he had that opportunity, he became a mechanic. You know, his daughters are both doctors. One's a anesthesiologist and the other's a orthopedic surgeon, you know. So it is. It's just that. It's just all of us have different skills and different gifts, and we have to have an education system which is flexible enough that there's opportunities for everybody to learn how to use those skills to benefit themselves and benefit society.
Well, and I want to thank you for being so outspoken on, you know, the General Assembly. Governor Lee just passed education freedom accounts, and you were very outspoken of your support of that, because that is, I think, a key component
it
of
is.
what you're talking about.
You know, school choice means more than just the financing aspect of it. You know, all of us learn differently. I think for most kids, the public school system, it works, you know. So when it comes to like Education Freedom Act, I don't think it's going to have huge impact on an enormous number of people. It's going to have enormous impact on a few people who really need it.
Yeah.
You know, and those people now often get lost, you know. But also, you know, homeschooling's great for some folks, maybe not everybody, you know. And I just think that parents and families, they're the ones that, we live in a country where we pride ourselves on freedom, right? They should have the freedom to determine how their child is educated, and they should have some say-so in where those dollars go.
Well, that's great, Glenn. Thank you for talking about education. Is there some other initiatives? I know you're doing some things now for veterans in Knoxville. Is there some other initiatives that you want to share? Yeah,
we're doing a really cool project that actually incorporates career and technical education. It's called Operation Heroes Hill. We're creating a community of 20 tiny homes plus the support systems for homeless veterans. This has kind of been done around the country. You know, there are other tiny home villages for veterans, but what we're doing that makes it different is it's actually high school kids with industry mentors that are building the houses. You know, so that again, that just makes ours really unique. And we're recording everything, we're documenting everything. So hopefully, if other folks want to do this, we've got the blueprint and we can just lay it out and say, this is how you do it. It's really cool because it can be done anywhere. You know, we have a piece of property that the county owns that that's where we're going to put this. Is about 3 acres, you know. So you think about that, that can be done pretty much anywhere around the country, and it's scalable. You know, it's not, I mean, if we had 20 acres, we could do 100 homes, you know, or whatever. So it's a really, really cool project. It's probably the last thing that I'll do as mayor, but I think it's actually the thing I'm going to be the most proud of. You know, housing affordability, I think, is going to be our next big crisis. You know, infrastructure has been a big issue across our state, and we often don't think about the fact that there's not been a lot of supply built the last few years, and the affordability of housing is just going to become a bigger and bigger problem. So I applaud you for looking at ways to. Yeah, you know, obviously, you know, being a larger area, an urban area now, you know, we have homelessness in Knox County, and the contributors are behavioral health, substance misuse, but also housing affordability. You know, I think most folks, you think about homelessness, you think about folks under the bridge. But I think a lot of people out there don't realize how many people are still working, how many people live in their car because they just can't afford a place to live. How many families are like that? We have issues with students in Knox County schools who are homeless. You know, and those are the sort of things that break your heart. So, yeah, there are other issues besides housing affordability with homelessness, but it is an issue. And for some people who are right on the cusp, you know, that is the issue. Okay, let's transition. Your term's almost over as mayor. You're currently serving as the treasurer for one of our gubernatorial candidates.
What does the future look like for Glenn Jacobs?
I don't know. We talked before about God's plan, and I don't know quite what that is yet, and I'm okay with that.
I know who we shouldn't vote against. Based on the story that we've heard today, this guy's not going to quit, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, but I just don't know. I don't know where my life is going to lead, and I'm okay with that. Whether I stay in government and politics, there are things that my skill set lends itself to, and there are other things that I would be miserable at and I wouldn't be very good at. So I don't want to stay in government if it's just to stay in government. But if I can actually serve in a meaningful capacity, yeah, that'd be great. But there might be other things out there as well. So we're just going to have to see.
Well, if you could, let's end on this. If you could cut a promo today, what would Mayor Kane say to Tennesseans?
Oh, it's not even a promo. It's actually an advertisement. We're the greatest state in the union. This is the greatest place to live. It's the reason that I live here. I still travel around the country and see other places, and there is no place like Tennessee. We just have it going on, man. The lowest tax burden in the country, regulations that actually make sense, all the things that our state government has done. I was back in my home state of Missouri a while back, and I was talking with their legislature and their governor about not having a state income tax here and how advantageous it was. And Governor Kehoe told me, he's like, when he goes to recruit a business, when he walks into the room, he's in 8th place behind the states that don't have an income tax. But what really actually impacted me the most was speaking with the Republican legislators, and to a person, every one of them said, we want to be more like Tennessee. Tennessee is our model. So right now I would put us right up there with Florida and Texas as being the best. And I think that we have a real chance to be the place that the rest of the country looks at and says, yeah, those are the guys that are doing it right. It's in Tennessee.
That's great. It's good to be a model. I was at a breakfast the other day. It was the Governor's Economic Development Conference, and I was sitting at a table, and this is the morning after the elections in New York City, and I was sitting at a table with a gentleman that works for the ECD, Economic Development Department in Nashville, and he said at 9 a.m. that morning he had already received 3 emails from companies that were wanting to leave New York City and come to Tennessee. And it just goes to show what good policy and good leadership does. I think there's a lot of people that would say we're full, we can't take anybody else, and I get it. Infrastructure is a big deal, and we've got to figure that out. But when you have the opportunity to pick the best industries and the best opportunities for your constituents, from your residents, what a blessing that is.
And what I would say too is, we have a lot of people move here, and that's stressed our infrastructure. But when companies come here and they create jobs, that means economic opportunity. And sometimes for people who've never had economic opportunity, the opportunity to advance before. So
I'm with you.
Net, it is a positive thing. Yeah, there's some stuff we have to figure out. And I really wish that California and New York would get their act together, because, you could slow down a little bit with the people coming here. But ultimately, when it's productive people that are coming here creating jobs, that's an environment that we should be proud of.
Well, it's not only good for our state, it's good for our country.
It is.
And I'll tell you one thing, what you've done in East Tennessee and Knox County and Oak Ridge with the nuclear side is not just a great thing for job generation, it's a big thing for national security. Because what Oak Ridge is doing when it comes to nuclear with small modular reactors and energy production is allowing us to be secure from a nation, because if we're not the leader in small modular reactors or nuclear power, then China or Russia will be. And we cannot afford as a country to let that happen. And that's coming back to Oak Ridge, Tennessee and East Tennessee. And we have to be successful. We can't let somebody else win on that race. So I applaud you for creating that environment to let that flourish. I think it's making a big difference across the
government has been very farsighted in understanding the importance of nuclear energy, and especially just, you think about the grid and the stress that the grid is under right now. The answer is, it ain't wind and solar. I hate to tell folks that, it's nuclear.
Yeah.
And if East Tennessee leads the way in that, It's good for us. It's good for the state. It's good for the country. You're exactly right.
Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's been a great time sitting down with you.
Thank you.
Learned a lot of new stuff, so
thank you.
Can't wait to see where you go from here.
Thanks.
Well, if you like this podcast, make sure you leave us a comment. We love to have your feedback. We love to hear from you. And also make sure you like and subscribe so you can see more of our content. Hope you'll join us again soon.